Okay, yeah, with the help of the Almighty, we have come here, Jewish people, some originally 8, 9 generations Palestinian, and from Canada, from England, and from the US. And we are here to deliver a message, a critical message, that Jews, because we are religious Jews, because we uphold the teachings of the Torah, that's the Jewish law, therefore we oppose entirely the existence of the State of Israel. That is an occupation, the Nakba, and the endless river of bloodshed that is created, that is caused by this occupation. Jews have been living together with Arabs, Muslims, for hundreds of years in Arab and Muslim lands, and in Palestine, which this picture is from. We constantly live together, even though we have a different religion. It was never an impediment of coexistence. We lived in peace. Zionism is a recent creation. Judaism is a religion of 3,000 years. Zionism just started 100-odd years ago. It's a nationalism. It's a transformation from our religion to create a national state. Our rabbis all around the world opposed it. They pleaded. They met with the kings of Transjordan, of the other Arab leaders. They spoke with the United Nations and said, we furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. This is in UN documents. 1947, the rabbis gave over to the United Nations. We've been massing and demonstrating in the tens and hundreds of thousands, Jews in Jerusalem, around the world, in America, in front of the White House. All the Jewish communities around the world that are true to Judaism adamantly opposes the occupation. We're not allowed to kill, steal, murder, oppress. We are furthermore not allowed to have a Jewish state, even in an uninhabited land. This Zionism, because they're occupying, has caused death and suffering of the Palestinian people. And this week, we have seen culmination, you can say, of how much bloodshed in days could happen, because they're the cause, the root cause, and we point our fingers at the tragic blood of hundreds of Jews, and that's just the following another link of the Palestinian bloodshed that was spilled, and now they're standing at the doors of Gaza, at the gates of Gaza en masse, over 300,000 troopers of Israel, and they're standing and they're throwing bombs on Gaza, and people are being murdered. There are almost 3,000 people murdered, or maybe more today, and maybe 10,000 already wounded. Our hearts cry as Jews with the Palestinian people, and we declare and speak to the world. We say, this is not the Jewish teaching, it's not Judaism, and it's not Jews who are true to the Torah. We cry and hurt with the Palestinian people. We plead with the world leaders, stop being conned by the Zionism and their vilification of the victims. The Palestinian people are being oppressed, and this is what the result is of oppression, of an illegal occupation of this Nakba. You want to bring an end to the suffering and bloodshed? You want to bring an end that the world should not become anti-Semitic? Stop the occupation, end this illegal, totally illegitimate Zionist state of Israel. They, the Zionist state of Israel, are the anti-Semites. They are the ones that cause bucket loads of hate of Jews and blood to pour. They are the ones that now want to put a band-aid on a hemorrhaging wound and have the world support them to further, God forbid, flatten Gaza. We cannot be silent. We cry with the world. Be just. God is just. God is compassionate. Let us stand together, pray to God for a speedy and peaceful removal of the impediment to peace, the Zionist state of Israel. Let us pray to God, and let us stand up with the people of Palestine and plead with the world leaders. Help us stop immediately this bloodshed, hate, and let us bring a free Palestine soon, where we can all live together in peace and harmony. The Jews together with the Muslims, and Jews can show our gratitude for all this good done to us. God help sooner nowadays.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. That's Rabbi Weiss, which Graham brought to the Gilchrist Experience.
I need my calculator.
How many years ago was that, Graham?
Oh, more than maybe 10 years
15
ago.
years ago. We had him at the house in 2000, what was that, 2004
Yeah.
or 5,
Yes, it's
We're in
been
the
a long
house.
while, more than 10 years. Yes.
15 more. All right, what do you think of that piece? Does that explain what happens in Israel today? Does that explain Netanyahu, the Zionists, which is comparison to Nazism?
You're talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. There was an interesting statement that he made probably in the last minute and a half. He said that the Israelis were the anti-Semites.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rabbi Weiss introduced me to a rabbi years ago who was in his 90s when I met him. And he lived in Palestine before the establishment of the State of Israel. He was one of the Orthodox rabbis who sent letters from Palestine to the United States and to the League of Nations, ultimately the United Nations, telling them that by setting up a state of Israel in Palestine, it would create multitudinous problems and bring about the advent of war. I spoke with that rabbi at a rally in Crown Heights on Eastern Parkway. And he said when the State of Israel was founded in 1947, he packed up, he left, and he never went back. In the early interviews that we had with Dovie Weiss, he spoke about Herzl,
Yeah.
the father of Zionism,
Right.
and how he wanted to push the Zionist agenda, which is not Judaism.
Right.
It is about an economic and military agenda.
Naturally.
During the Second World War, he worked with the Nazis to
Right.
eradicate the Orthodox Jews who
Right.
were standing in the way of his agenda and his program.
Herschel, do you not have any evidence of, is that in your history book?
Theodore Herschel.
Theodore,
Theodore
was it
Herschel.
Theodore? Theodore,
Yeah, Theodore Herschel.
1895,
Within the 1800s, he died in 1904.
1904.
He died in 1904. He spearheaded the Zionist movement, but what gave him power was the ongoing persecution in Europe, which then a lot of Jews did not buy into the Zionist movement, but because so many Jews were being persecuted, at the time there were about 11 million Jews in the world, but 7 million of them, scattered throughout the States and Europe. And so with the increased persecution, the option and theory of the Zionist movement became more popular. However, there were many that were against it because many Jews already lived in Jerusalem, right, with their Jewish and Christian counterparts. There's this narrative that all Palestinians are Arab. Many Palestinians are Christian, right?
Right.
Palestine or Palestinian is just ethnicity, it's not a religion.
Right.
And so they create this, it's the Muslims versus everyone else. And this is to trigger back to what it all started from, which was the Crusades, the Holy War.
Right.
And so this has been just revamped into some sort of Holy War situation. But
I'm not going to say. Say whatever happened.
yeah,
Go
so Theodore Herschel is the architect, right? The main person who pushed for the Zion movement.
Who actually worked with the Nazis.
So, as much as when we talk about the Zion movement and the purpose of it and why it gained so much steam, you have to look at the history of the region, right? We know that, I don't know if we know this, Israel is about the same size as the state of New Jersey, right? It's on the edge of the Mediterranean Sea. And when we look at the history of the region, we know that one of the most famous person to come out of that region, his name is Abraham, Father Abraham. And he has these two children, Ishmael and Isaac, right? And Jewish people gravitate to the story of Isaac, how their birthright to the land is through Isaac, while Arabs,
We're having a problem with your sound.
oh,
You want to stop? All right, so we're just going to prepare ourselves for the next rolling. How's that? And we'll come back to talk about Israel.
You just went off.
All right.
You got that now?
Yeah, okay. I don't know what I said or didn't say. You didn't hear anything I said?
we hear, we didn't hear.
I was hearing you.
Oh, okay.
Well, obviously his mic is
Mic check, mic check.
mic check. Can you hear him now? That's why you always check the mics before you give it to the people. Well, we got a new person here. We'll blame it on him. We got a rookie in the house.
Oh, no.
All right, what we were talking about was,
Should I continue on my point or should
well,
I
we want to
pause? Pause.
explain
Okay.
To our American people who are unfamiliar with all this, like such as Sharon Salam.
Mother
You know,
Salam.
you on,
Yes,
Mother Salam.
Mother of you, she's a Halamite. Now, what we know about Jewish people is something completely different.
Oh, yeah.
We never realized that Israel is run by, we know what, what's his name? Netanyahu was about. He's the Trump of Israel. And we know that that's the Hitler of Israel. Then we find out he's a Zionist, and he doesn't belong there, according to Rabbi Weiss. That the Jews don't have a religious right to be in Israel. These are what other Jews.
So I mean,
like
there
Rabbi
are people that are
Weiss
going to
is
fight you
telling.
on that. You know, like I understand that's your perspective, and not that your perspective is mine or not, but
I'm talking about what the man's talking about.
yeah. I mean, so when we look at the history of
Is
the
there
region,
an argument about that?
of course, there's huge arguments
Big
about
one.
it. There's not one side. There's books and volumes
Well, we
of books
tell
on
the
it.
truth here at the Gilchrist Experience.
Also, we had not told the history. We had not told the history of the
we
region.
always tell the truth
Huh?
here.
So
That's
yeah.
why
That's a
I put
separate
Rabbi.
show.
No, I'm
Weiss
not. I'm not
on.
saying Rabbi's
I know
perspective
there's
isn't a great perspective, isn't a perspective of
Yeah.
many people, but there are people within his own diocese that disagree with that perspective. And so the reality of it
Well, we
is
got a
that,
fight here.
huh?
See, we got an argument right here.
So no, I'm not saying that his
I was
perspective.
trying to get somebody else's
Okay,
opinion.
go ahead. Listen, I'm sorry. Let me be quiet here.
No, you got the right view.
Huh?
You got the right
I
view.
got the right view. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Mother's gonna back me up. Mother Salam.
That's right.
Okay. Well, since she agrees with it, I guess you can speak some more. So what do you think?
No, I was just saying that
As
there are
an
multiple
American,
perspective. There are
All
many
I'm
perspectives.
doing
Yeah.
is presenting
And
other
so
ideas.
yeah,
Right.
the history
Yeah.
is what's important to allow the audience to make their understanding whether Theodore Herschel was as we say, Hitler, or Netanyahu's a Hitler, or Trump is a Hitler, or Biden's a Hitler, right? We could all put a lot of people in that sort of, we could bind many people into that title. But when we're talking about specifically the history of the region, many people have different views. Now, what's the history of the region? The history of the region is that the land of Canaan, right, biblically, religiously, a lot of people don't subscribe to religion, was promised to a man by the name of Abraham, right? That Abraham's descendants will inhabit the land. Now, many people don't care for Christianity or care for Islam or Judaism,
Right.
but most of the world is of these three religions, right? And we know that out of the
We're family.
huh?
We're family.
We're family to some
all
degree.
God's children.
Right, Hindus and Buddhists and others will disagree, but
no, they're family
because
too.
the world powers subscribe to these religions, it becomes the apex of the Crusades. We are just experiencing another diocese, another trial, another level to the Crusades
Well,
that started so many thousands of
We'll
years
have
ago.
to get back to you.
Okay.
Because Graham has a limit
Okay,
because you were late, and so
okay.
we have to let Graham have his say before he has to leave. We've got 11 minutes for you, Graham.
Yeah, I won't take 11 minutes. The history of Judaism in Europe is not the history of the Israelites of Canaan and Palestine. The Israelites are Semitic people. Jews are not Semitic people. They are people who have adopted the faith of the Israelites after being proselytized by rabbis who left Palestine in the 8th century AD. And that was as the First Crusades were ramping up. The Spanish soldiers out of Cordoba going into Palestine to fight with the Muslims coming out of Palestine to go back to Spain to fight with the Christians. Both of them crossed a land that is commonly known as Western Russia. It was the land of the Tsars. And each group in passing through spoke with these people about their mission. And the Tsars noticed that they were talking about the same people, Abraham, Moses, Isaac. And they said, if you all are connected to the same people, why are you fighting? But they couldn't get a good answer for that. Ultimately, in the 8th century, there were rabbis out of Palestine coming through who also mentioned the same people, but were not fighting with anyone. And they adopted the faith of the Israelites. Over the next 800 years, they're known in Europe as Jews.
Right.
When King James is translating the scriptures into the common text, the term Jew is entered into the text. Abraham is the father of the Israelites. There are no Jews in the biblical text.
That's it.
There aren't.
Make it plain, Jay.
My grandmother came to this country 110 years ago, my matrilineal grandmother. She became a citizen of the United States. But she never had the rights that I had being born here. When Moses left Egypt, he left not only with the Israelites, he brought Egyptians with him. And that was very symbolic because Moses was a forerunner of Christ. He was to exemplify what Christ was going to do many years later. He came for the house of David, he came for the Israelites, but he also saved the Gentiles. He even took a second wife who was Ethiopian. And his sister railed against him for it, not because this sunburnt woman was black. They were all black. It was because she was not of the house of David.
Make the
and
point.
She was stricken with a disease. And Moses had to intercede, and God cured her of the disease. So when we talk about this land, Abdul Gayman Nasser said after the 6 Days War in 1967, how is it that you left here black and you come back white? This is why the rabbis in Palestine did not want this land to be taken and a country established because they knew it was going to present problems. These Jewish rabbis were living in Palestine, living in peace with Palestinians, with Muslims, with Arabs. And the rabbi told me they live next door to each other. They raised their children together. They babysat for each other. They said setting up this country, quote unquote, called Israel, and that was the United States, Great Britain, and the United Nations, stripped people of the land. And unfortunately, there's a lot of racism in Israel against people of color. And the Israelites living there who have come in from Africa are treated with disdain, and they live in an area called Dimona. It's next to a toxic waste dump. There's a lot of racism in Israel against Semitic people. The Europeans are not Semitic.
That's right.
And the dress code of the Orthodox Jews, and I asked Rabbi Weiss about it, why do you wear all this black clothing? He said that is the dress code of the rabbis from Poland in the 1880s. There's no biblical tie. There's no religious connection even. It is a traditional code of dress that they wear.
Well, what I'm going to do, Graham, is that the Hebrew that we know is Dr. Ben, born in Ethiopia of a Puerto Rican mother. Did you know about Dr. Ben?
You know, learning from my elders. Yes, I've heard of Dr. Ben.
And he was another friend. Now, we never mentioned how we met Dr. Rabbi Weiss 15 years ago. You met him in Brooklyn.
One of his congregants walked into my office, and we had an hour conversation because the young man, he believed that he was entitled to certain things. And we had a heart-to-heart conversation. And I had to let him know why he was not entitled to a special deal, because he and I had no personal relationship. But it was very presumptive of him to tell me that he wanted a special deal. And we got into the blessings of Abraham.
It's funny, the privileges that, I guess, supremacy, and all the bamboozle, the lies that we've been told. And this was a personal experience between, we had Rabbi Weiss to my house when I was doing the house. Beverly remembers that well. And so she saw this piece that I showed. She said, well, we had him in the house here 15 years ago. And he was amazed at the coloring in the house. He told us how warm the place looked. And we have another person that, I want you to run item 2, Dr. Benz, which Salam knew well. Yeah. And he's born in Ethiopia, which is my homeland. So run item 2 and we'll get back.
I have to go. God bless.
Okay.
It's the strangest thing in the world to me. I was telling the officers the truth, and they took my words and they twisted it. I said, I'm gonna go to the cops, and I'm gonna tell them what I saw, and I'll be home before my mom gets back. And I came home 7 years later. My name is Yusef Salam. I'm one of the Central Park 5. We were in the park, and there was a lot of things that people were doing, a lot of mischief making, people throwing rocks at cars, you know, harassing people. The things that I saw that night should have given me an indication to leave. The next day, I was told that police officers were looking for me. When they kept asking me, okay, tell us about the jogger. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then it began, okay, tell us your story all over again. There were over 400 articles written, and all of these articles were pulling apart our lives. Donald Trump took out full-page ads in New York City's newspapers calling for the reinstatement of the death penalty, specifically for our case. In my trial, they said Yusef Salam doesn't have a written or videotaped confession, but the others do. This is what some of the others has said about his involvement. And as a result of that, I was convicted. They sent me up to a place called Harlem Valley. We were there for a crime that we didn't commit. And you know, here we were looking at officers. They looked like bodybuilders. Some of them had tattoos of black and brown babies with nooses around their necks, on their arms. It was almost like a signal, like I'm not gonna tell you how bad it's gonna be. Just look at my tattoos. You know, get out of line and we will bury you up here. When I came home from prison, I was branded a rapist. For years, I would be walking around in this fog and, you know, just trying to put one foot in front of the other and figure life out again. And then 13 years later, the truth comes out in the most amazing way. When the police found out about Matias Reyes's story, about the facts that he told them, They knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that he raped the Central Park jogger. And when they finally said that they were dropping the charges, it was the happiest day of my life. Nelson Mandela said, being angry, being bitter is like drinking poison and expecting your enemy to die. It doesn't do anything to the person. It does everything to you. But I'm still haunted. Being free is free, like you're free from all of the things that held you back. I'm not free like that.
Here's another empathy moment when you pick up that energy of Yusef. He's one of the more amazing people I've met in life, you know, to watch him, what he went through, and we can see that he's a product of your womb because of your energy. You're the producer of this human. You're the mother of Yusef. And I lived, I watched it happen, but you can feel it. And as a result of all that pain, he came out a decent human being, because he was that in the beginning. But see, this trauma that happens to us as black people, the abuse that we get, we learn from our experiences how to deal with it, no matter how strong it comes. But we need a backup. But he had a mother like you that went to see him as often as you could, and tell what you see about the accomplishment of him now. What, some 35 years later? He's running for councilman.
Yes, he is.
All right? So this is the power of God. I mean, this is experiencing God's blessing. It truly is. I watched it happen. Tell us your story.
Well, it was a whole different kind of process. I wouldn't really wish that type of thing on anyone.
Yeah, right.
And right now, as a member of Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated, one of the things that Yusef and people like Yusef have brought to me is a realization that there are so many others. So many others who are behind bars today who may be innocent, who didn't get a fair trial. And then there are so many others who are walking our streets who have been freed because they served all of their time, and they too might be innocent, but they don't have a way to attain freedom from the wrongful conviction. It's an interesting process when you look at it, you know, because when I went to visit Yusef, I saw so many people who were incarcerated. The majority of them were, you know, black and brown children, and these children facilities that they call juvenile facilities. And on most cases, when they call people juveniles, I realized after talking to people in the community and outside that it's like a slang word, and it prepares you to be willing to do anything to certain types of people that you wouldn't do to children. And it has you view them a certain way. They become animals, worthless, people who can be treated in any kind of humane way. And in that inhumanity, people say, well, it's really not enough. They deserve more of the inhumanity. It's like a place you wouldn't want to be. You know, I've walked down these streets here in New York. I've been cursed. I've been spit at. I've had
Really?
people cross the street. You know, it's like you're going through this hell. Many of the children at the time were assaulted in various schools that they were attending, and the same thing was happening to them. So you now fearful for the lives of the children who haven't been arrested. When this thing happened to Yusef, it was almost like you go out and you see these police coming and they're just picking up everybody. Everybody they can get their hands on. And it doesn't matter if you were there, if you weren't there. All that matters is that you are black, you are
That's
brown.
right.
That's all that matters. And if they could get you without a parent present, then they can work on getting you to say anything. And this is what happened in Yusef's case and in the case of many of the other children that were there, because there were hundreds of children that were brought in for questioning. And some of them were saved, you know, and it was just through, let's say, the grace of God that those children were able to walk away.
Right.
And it ended up being the 5. Because before there were the 5, there was the 6, there was the 7, there was the 8, there was, you know, so many more.
Right.
But it was one that started us, me in particularly, on this journey of help, of trying to be of some sort of service in the communities that we walk in, seeing this. Because I also saw that a number of the people who were incarcerated had come from various institutions that were places that were gearing our children to be incarcerated, from the public school system, from ACS at that time it was called.
ACS, oh God.
Where you see so many people who are incarcerated, who have been in foster care. And if you go to the adult facilities, you see them there. You know, it should be a crime that children in grades, 3, 4, are educated in such a way that the institutions who decide how to build prisons and who's going to be incarcerated can decide at that point whether or not your child is worthy of the jail.
Yeah.
And as things changed within these particular systems, other laws were put in place to make sure that people who were incarcerated had less and less of a full potential of reaching their own goals. You know, they talk about recidivism.
Right.
And with recidivism, they put in something called 3 strikes and you're out.
Yeah.
So if on your 3rd strike you happen to be hungry and you pick up an apple that you haven't paid for and you eat it, you could go to jail for life.
Right.
Just for that. And it's like a system that is making money off of certain types of things, because these things that they're making money on are human beings.
Right.
And as they make this money off of these human beings, you look at the numbers of people who are incarcerated today and in those days and to be incarcerated in the future. The prisons make more money off of incarceration than people who are in Harvard. They're making more money. So it's worth it to keep these doors open instead of closing them up. It's worth it to make sure that when people come out of the prisons, that the avenues to success are very limited. So it makes them, let's say, in a way, have to commit crime.
Yeah.
You know, you want to come out and you want to do better. You want to have a good life. You want to move forward with your life, whether you've committed the crime or you haven't. You want to be able to flourish. But that flourishing is on hold if you're restricted from certain jobs,
That's
or
it.
from certain housing, or certain opportunities. You know, we have people who are coming out of jail don't have nowhere to stay.
We're all a product of our environment.
That's right. That's right.
If your whole imagery of life is stealing, robbing,
Well,
and knock another man down, that's what you become.
it might not necessarily be your whole piece of life, stealing, robbing, knocking another person down. It could be something that you've learned in prison.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
you might not be the kind of person who's used to this type of thing, but you see it happening and you realize that that's the only way you are going to survive.
That's right.
Is that you have to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because when you look at one of the young fellas that was incarcerated, like even Yusef was assaulted when he was incarcerated. He still has a scar on his face regarding that. Then you look at Corey Rice, and he was raped and beat up on all the, it seemed like all the time. You know what I'm saying? It's like, how do you live through that if you are not able to fight? And then you don't have the skills. There's no money put into how you're going to come back into the community. That's the problem.
Right.
There's no money that says, well, let me train this person to do this. Let me train them to do that. At one point, during this period, they had college in the schools. And then you say, well, a lot of these people who are coming out of prisons who are going through these colleges are not getting back in jail. So, hey, we need to cut this college program. Do you understand what I'm saying? We need to cut that so that we can keep these jails full. We need fresh blood for the jails.
Right.
And we start looking for fresh blood. What is it? How old are you all in the third grade? Let me see, 6, 7, 8.
Right.
You know, 8, 9 years old, you're deciding where they're going to be.
So
You know, they claim crime is down.
So you think this is a planned genocide? The way they teach our kids and the exposure we get to our history. So it's up to us, the elders who have gone through these changes, to run for office, such as Yusef is doing. Now,
I guess so.
When he
That
gets
could be
in there
part of
next
it.
week, we're going to have a person in that's one of us, that's
This
been
is what
through
the
the
people
changes
say. This
and
is
know
what they
what
say.
to do,
Well, let's
how
hope.
to avoid this.
Well, you
Now,
see,
these
part
teaching,
of that, now just remember,
how do you feel about
part of that is that he has to have all those other people, a certain amount of those other people who are already there, to vote with him.
That's right.
He's not going to be able to do things on his own or
Right.
alone.
Right.
He'll need others.
So then
know.
we have the sources of teaching people how they should vote. Now that's our major theme here, is to get all the youngsters out there, especially from National Action Network, and teach young people that they must vote, that it does count, no matter what you've been taught, or the delusions out here, the distractions, such as what we're seeing happen in Palestine, what we
That's
saw happen to us as a people. Now this is happening around the world. This is not our only, I mean,
That's
we
true.
have 400 years about. So those of us that survived this planned genocide by white supremacists have to teach to others how we got through it. I, as an 82-year-old, I only got through it through the blessings of God. That's the only way I'm still here. And I know that to be, God is real for me. And I think this is an expression of gratitude by teaching others that God is real. What say you, Minister?
Oh,
McHenry?
I was
That
listening
gives you
to
a half an
Mother
hour to
Salam,
preach.
and as I was watching Yusef tell his testimony, I began to cry.
Yeah, it gets
you
to
know,
you, doesn't
Yeah. Don't
I
cry.
began to shake a bit.
it? Yeah.
You know, there's many stories in the Bible that a lot of people don't believe because they're miraculous. But we are seeing in real time God work.
Yeah.
I don't know if you designed to name him Yusef or how that name came about when you decided to name him, But there's a man in the Bible by the name of Yusuf in the book of Genesis
Is that
who basically was sold into slavery at the age of 17 by his own brothers. And as he's sold into slavery, he's taken down to Egypt. And he's basically serving in the house, and he's accused of rape, working in his master's house. He becomes the head slave of the house. And the story goes that Potiphar, his master's wife, said that he was of good countenance, that he was a good-looking man. And she came on to him, and that he ran. But the story that she told was that, that she was raped. Some stories go that Potiphar was a eunuch and that the wife had needs. But whatever came to be, the lie was out there, and he was put in prison to death. And at the age of 20, he was rotting in a prison. And just when you think that it's all over, for about 10 more years, he's trying to figure out how to get out of death. And his gift made way for him to get out. And it's a story that's miraculous because many around him died. Many around him were in the same situation. And he was preaching hope, and he was telling people the truth while he was there. But when he got out at the age of 28, 30 years old, he gets elected to be the vice president to the Pharaoh. And seeing Yusuf's story, we're seeing it all over again. We saw it where Mandela come out of prison and become president. And the reality is that we as a people are and have been in danger since the inception of this country. We came here in shackles. We fought through prayer. We fought on our knees by praying. We fought on our feet by running. So many people have come in line, from Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, so many names, so many ministers to get us to where we are today. But the reality is we are experiencing slavery in so many ways through the zip code that we grow up into, and to the point where the zip code that we grow up in conditions us to then, for the majority of us, to go to prison. And so how do we fight this current day slavery of our people? She was talking about the schools to prison pipeline. And and a lot of people don't believe in that theory, right? A lot of people are saying, well, how does this? But the moment that you continue to take resources out of one district to put resources into another so their kids could flourish, it's a modern day slavery. So the kids on the street don't have after school programs. Why? Because there's no money to pour in for them to have an after school program. And so what do? They get into situations that are not ideal. They're hungry. They're naked on the street. They're homeless. So, and then within this system, how do we as a people get together and say, let us do the work of the Lord? It's not just that slavery happened to us, and then the black codes, and then Jim Crow, and then the crack epidemic and mass incarceration. Right now, we're dealing with a genocide right here. We could look towards the Middle East, and there's all kinds of aids happening to the Ukraine. But there's been no one to come to our aid. Black bodies are still rolling around in the streets of America, and no one cares. No one cares that there has been a Holocaust of the Middle Passage in this country to get all of the black bodies out of Africa into what we know now is that the Americas and the Caribbean. We talk about all the time the occupation of Palestine, right? But before they thought about putting Jews into Palestine, which is current day Israel, they thought about creating Israel out of Uganda.
That's true. Right.
Which is a story that no one talks about. Why? Because who we are is, and what we are to them is a human resource.
But isn't it true that the closer you get to God, the busier the devil gets?
So the reality is that we cannot fathom the way God minds, right? The way that God works.
Is that not true?
It's not necessarily a fact, no. But it's so a lot of times.
I find that so.
Huh?
Through my experience, I find that to be the fact.
Well, some people say they're blessed, and because they live in their mansion, they're touched by God.
I'm not.
I'm saying
I
everybody
remember
has a
the-
different theory now, but my experience is that when you come up in poverty,
Yeah.
and that when you come up of a people that have been constantly oppressed, just almost like mirroring the people of the Bible, you will find experiences of where God will come out and talk to you and will walk with you in ways that those that have will not experience that. Right? Jesus says it's harder for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven than a poor man because of all of the choices and all of the temptations around him, the lack of needing to cry out to God daily.
Then that applies to all humans, not just your color. You have to judge a person by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin.
So we
That
know.
comes
So we
with-
know that oppression in the Americas and throughout the world come in many shapes. But the reality is, the darker you are, the more likely and probable that you will end up in prison, that you will not be given opportunity, that you will be naked and hungry and homeless. We know this. Is it that all of us who are a particular color experience that? No, we know they've always taken tokens out of our community and say, no, if they made it, but it's all by the system of design. Living here in New York, there's so many buildings, but not one black person owns one of these skyscrapers. So we don't own anything. So, you know,
That's
the
'cause we-
reality of it is,
That's because we don't think of ourselves as people.
it's been because we've been conditioned, and the information
Well, you have to
own
uncondition
and the
yourself.
process. How can you uncondition yourself?
You think
when the
differently.
bank itself,
When you understand the truth.
You're talking out of a place of where you don't own anything. Because last time I checked, you don't own a building in New York City, you yourself. But if you went to go and try to own one, the probability of you doing that is minimal. Why? Because banks run everything. You go and ask the bank for a loan to go own a building, see what kind of answer you get. So it's not just about, I need to be
how do you
conditioned.
see us changing
If you know the road plan to getting a building, they're gatekeepers. How do you get around those gatekeepers? Part of it is voting people in
Part
to
of
create
it-
policy.
That's
Part
the
of
most,
it.
That's
part
the
of it.
most important
Part
part.
of it. It's the only tool we have, but it's not going to remedy everything and all of it.
Isn't that the most important part of it?
It's
You go to National
no,
Action
it's not.
Network
It's
just
not.
like I do.
It's about wealth
No.
and it's about power. Having
how
power
do you
and
get wealth
position is
and
only
power?
part of the fight.
And you
How do you get
also
wealth
have
and
to
power?
you also have to realize that this country was built on free labor.
Right.
It wasn't built so that everyone could work. No matter whether you had a PhD or whatever kind of education or trade you have, everybody cannot work because they don't have the type of job availability for everybody.
It's a lie they tell
So
us.
now what is it do you do with those excess people? You have to put them someplace. And most of the places they put them is in places where they can get free labor. The prisons give you free labor. A lot of companies have
Victoria's Secret.
taken work and put it in prisons so that they have a labor base that they're not really responsible for. And you can have worked for one of those companies for 10 years, 5 years, it doesn't matter. When you come out of prison, you can't go across the street and say, listen, I worked in your company while I was in prison. Will you give me a job? And you can't do that and expect to get that job because you've been working in prison. If you get sick in prison and you're unable to work, they have so many others who are eager to have something to do because of the nature of the prison and how they house these people so that they can fill those jobs. And you don't get a pension when you get out of there. You don't get retirement. You don't get anything but a start over and whatever you have in your pocket. This is how this system works.
We've seen people that overcome this struggle. We've seen a
Yeah.
lot of survivors of the planned genocide.
That's
the
right.
400 years of slave mentality, and mental slavery is the worst disease.
I don't.
Look,
I don't.
I haven't
70% of
finished.
okay.
Let me
I'm sorry.
finish my point.
Go ahead.
Now, we've discussed the problems. What's the solution? Now give me a solution to all this.
The solution might be partly what you're saying when you talk about this mental thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to give you an example of what I mean, because I
Okay.
want you to understand this.
Yeah.
I went to Guinea. I was walking
Oh,
around
man.
one of the streets,
Mm-hmm.
and I walked in this line of street stores
Mm-hmm.
that were like outside, people just selling their wares on the street,
Yeah.
right? And there was a place that was selling dolls, lovely, sweet-looking dolls.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? And I looked at the dolls, and I said, wow, it's not a black doll in the group. I'm in
And
a
this is
black
Africa.
country.
This
I'm
is
in a black
Africa.
country.
It's in,
I'm in a black country,
that's the brainwash.
but I didn't see the black doll. And so you ask now, how does it start? It starts in a subliminal way
Mhm.
that cannot be touched on, because it's starting when you hand your infant that white doll.
The
You
whole
know,
thing-
it's like a whole type of thing.
whole-
There was a time when color didn't matter. No matter what color you was, you know, there was respect for black, there was respect for whatever you was.
the 60s
But
in
that
New York.
was, no, that was long before the
Hundreds of
60s,
years ago.
hundreds of
Hundreds
years
and
ago.
hundreds.
Oh,
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was
Oh,
when
you're talking about-
Socrates was going over to Africa
Okay.
to find out how to read and write.
okay.
You know, and the rest of those people, and they talk about how they were educated. That was respect for people. That was respect for people when the Moors went into Spain.
That's right.
That was respect
700
for people.
700
And many of
AD.
those people had to be taught their worthlessness.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons why they divided people up and put them on different ships. The wife was on one ship, the children was on another ship, and the husband was on another. You had to break that chain of who they were
That's right.
to break them down to get to a generation that would believe what it is they were trying to sell you,
That's right.
that you were worthless. And this is part of the stuff they're trying to teach us today. That's why they're trying to dumb down education,
Yeah.
dumb down your story.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, where do we move? How do we go up from here? We,
Yeah. How do we go
in
on?
our workings, yes, we have to teach our own story.
That's it.
And really, I hate to say
That's
this,
it.
because in a way, when I say this, a lot of people seem to think it's kind of racist, but we have to be like the Jews. We have to start teaching our own stuff and not relying on others.
So
and when we do
that's-
that, maybe we can raise our people up. But
That's
that
it.
still doesn't create the avenue that's needed for us to prosper as a
Well,
whole.
Let me show one more item. This is Dr. Ben. Now, he was born in Ethiopia, came
Yeah.
to New York in 1938 with a Puerto Rican mother.
It's
So
all right.
run that number 3 item, and we'll get back to,
Dr.
I want
Ben.
solutions.
You
the
want
solution-
You want
solutions?
solutions.
It's
Let's
to
go back
teach
to your
how,
beginnings where you talked about your first book and you were in Puerto Rico, and you showed us a picture of your mother,
Yeah.
which is surprising. It's I had it on tape, but
My mother is, as you know, my mother is Tulia, and the family call her Tulia, and most people know her as Julia. And she is was somewhat light skinned,
right,
and my
very
mo-
light, matter of fact.
Yeah, my mother's family is in Puerto Rico, and they are very light. She was, many times she had been told I could go to places that she was with me and I couldn't go in. And she refused to go in. But
We're talking about the what year are we talking about? See if we can pull
up
that
to in the 40s and so
Could you
forth,
try that, Victor?
I would be unable to
Look, Victor, could
go with my mother different places, and that was my mother.
And this is what
That's
year?
about 40 something, 50. That picture was done. She had come to a conference in Philadelphia, and her girlfriend
Can you
took the
get that
picture of her. And so when she
Yeah,
died,
there you go.
the girlfriend gave me that picture. But my father and mother weren't allowed to take pictures.
And your
And
father was...
she doesn't know I have that picture.
Okay.
That is the picture I kind of was told. I am not allowed to have pictures.
Now, what was it like with a fair-skinned mother, and your father was
Extremely dark,
okay.
much darker than I.
And you're in between the two.
Yeah.
Well, they say, you know, sometimes
There were 7 of us, 7 children. My mother had 7 children.
7 kids.
7 children. I was the mid kid.
Okay.
I was the 4th kid. 3 boys died before me, and 3 girls died after me, and I lived. None of them came more than 3 years old.
Is that right?
There was my mother was a midwife. So you figure she would know, but there was crib death. A lot of children died from crib death, and they never knew what it was.
Okay. So you're the lucky one. Lucky
They didn't expect me to live.
So how was that when you came to America?
When I came to America in 1938 to be with my uncle was the man who brought the number system to the United States. He and Pompey, Alex Pompey, used to be the baseball head of the Cuban of the African American Negro, they used to call Negro League. And my uncle came here then, and my uncle became the number man. Caspar Hussein, who also was a co-owner the restaurant there, and for years he was a big number man in Harlem. He built the first house built by an African American and Convent Avenue near 142nd Street.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, I didn't know what that's by.
I got a minute left on my time clock.
You got a minute left?
Yes.
And we got more than a minute that we can say.
No, I just want to throw that in there and say you can't judge a book by its cover.
No, you can't.
You never know. All right, this has been the Gilchrist Experience, and the God in me loves the God in you. And stay tuned for more black entertainment. Everybody in the Bible was black. Blacks, hey, we rule the world. Most of the centuries that exist. And we have our own history to learn, so we become producers, owners of our, your spirit is what you got to own, and just keep the God within, right, Minister?
The God within me loves the God in you.
Amen.
Loves the God in Mother Salam here.
Yeah. So it
Yes,
is
sir.
with all humans.
Yes, we're all human.
That's right. It's one